Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, the Legends are running low on money because Gary is the over-tipper because it's like he's like, no, this is like the casual amount you're supposed to do for tipping, but it's like he's going by present day standards. So he's been giving people he gave somebody what was it, like a waitress like $20 or something like that. It's like, yeah, and now they only have like $35, so they don't even have enough to buy a whole bunch of tickets because it's like, well, they do have the pocket dimension that they can hide out in. They also have to get wigs to hide themselves because the bullet blondes are all over the place. Sadly, Ava and Sarah are sisters in the public eye, so it's like, oh, that kind of sucks. But obviously, it's like they're in like a time where it's like, right, the only person amongst the squad that can actually kind of have any say or do anything is Nate. So it's kind of like, yeah, kind of a sucky time. But they run into Eddie in his very inclusive place at the time. Eddie's password is password, and it's like, right, because at first I was wondering if it was all the stuff that's already like, referencing Nate and stuff like that. I thought that's what it was. Oh no, the password is password. Makes sense because you want it to be simple, something so simple I think people wouldn't think of it type of thing. But it's a swinging inclusive place, and obviously they're helping Eddie out by supplying him with alcohol from Constantine's magic fridge. So they're able to get their split of it. It's like 20% we get in the back room and you don't ask questions. But I thought it was a beautiful thing that Zari learned from this episode, and I think that's kind of interesting of like living in the moment because she's listening to Barad play with the band, and Eddie's like, yeah, but this is a one-time thing. Like, they're just like playing off each other. They're caught in a vibe, and just like let it wash over you. Don't think about what the future holds for her. Just like, this is a one-time thing. But so be in the moment, be in the present. And I think a lot of times Zari probably has a hard time being that. I mean, maybe that's also a little bit of a byproduct of literally not being from the present. I mean, not only are you time travelers, but she's also from the future. The rest of the time that everyone else is from, she's not even from. So maybe but I think also there's an element to who she is not being in the present. And I think being in the present, it's such an interesting thing for her because now but other people, Nate, for example, because I love that he calls out Gary for it later on, because Eddie gets beat up by a mobster who owns his bar and everything because he heard I heard you're getting booze from someone else, and so Eddie lost his place. So Zari wanting to help Eddie out, especially because Eddie has such an inclusive place. It's like, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have had the money we'd need to get to New York. But also at the same time, it's like, this place is too important to this time. Having a place like this that's so inclusive, like, we need to help Eddie out the best we can. So Zara uses the mansion dimension and pocket dimension and helps do what she does best, a Zari party. So she adds Eddie's help, and they're putting on a one-time event with the bullet blondes, so no, and it's like, right, you want someone not to keep a secret, you tell it to Ricky, and Blabbermouth Ricky's letting everybody know, and password being Rutabaga. So but Zari's so in control of things, and Gary's like, oh, if there's anything I could do, and then just Nate's like, Gary, you like, it's like, because at first he's like, do you have a crush on Zari? He's like, really? If you do, that's interesting. But he's like, I don't have a crush on Zari. It's like, wait, you like being bossed around, you little sicko. It's like, yeah, Kayla, Ava, John, now this situation. And I love that he's like, really? You just realizing that now? It's like, but shouldn't you, an alien like you, find someone who appreciates you for you? He's like, no, I'm fine with this. Because he was talking about Gary's pattern, what Gary immediately calls out his pattern is like, oh, what about you basically being with someone from, with always a timeline and a totem in between you and said person, and it always creates a situation where you never have to fully dedicate, like, you can always have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You're never like all in type of situation. And I think that's so fascinating. Because it's something I've said about Nate for the longest time, that he finds himself constantly in that situation with a woman from a different timeline. Amaya, Zari both fall in that category. Zari doubly so because she's from an alternate timeline that no longer exists. But also there happens to always be a totem also in the middle of those relationships as well. So I think that's just such an interesting thing that, you know, Gary's just telling him to, like, talk to Zari about, you know, what about the future, like, being all in. And it is kind of like a defense mechanism to kind of protect himself, because it's just, right, you never know how, like, it prevents you from being fully vulnerable with a person, because you're always with one foot out, because it's like, you know, it's like, yeah, we kind of have hit a rock, you know, it's like, we are good, but it's like, right, it's, we could, what are their plans for the future, like, because that is always going to be the thing of, like, right, we are from a different timeline, and we haven't really talked about, like, the future of our relationship, especially because his relationship with Zari is even more complicated than the Amaya situation, because yes, the timeline thing, but unlike her situation where it's like, hey, I'm from a timeline, I'm from the past and I have to go back, it's like, maybe at some point in the time, they're like, Behrad and Zari will have to go back to their own time, maybe, you know. I think that'll eventually happen, because I mean, we see with the Legends, like, not everyone sticks around, like, everyone has their own paths outside of the Legends as well. So I don't know, it's a really, really fascinating conversation between the two of them. And I thought that was really interesting. On the flip side of things, you have Spooner, Gideon, and Astra on a train trying to track down the Legends, and they run into the Masquerades. In particular, Maud is a person they really get close to, because she actually bails them out of a situation, because they're like, right, you're on the train without a ticket, but she had their back saying they were part of the band. And Astra becomes like, you know, she's like, oh, I'm a manager, so she ends up looking at the Masquerades, what I'm blanking on. Oh, contract. And it's like, right, I guess because someone, like, her experience in hell would probably give her definitely insight to, like, contracts and stuff like that. But she ends up getting the Masquerades to fire their manager, because he's taking a crap ton of money, and it's just also, like, the way it's set up, it expires, like, after, like, a certain amount of time. So it's like, yeah, because he's been their manager for, like, 3 years or something, and Astra kind of took over, and I think you had Spooner kind of looking like, maybe you shouldn't, because, like, you know, Spooner kind of filled the role of Ava, you know, which I even love her being like, oh, sure, Miss Ava, and it's just like, no, this is, and then Gideon's like, no, this is Spooner Cruz. It's like, yeah, she completely missed the joke there, Gideon, because I guess she's almost playing like a little bit of a Drax angle of, like, yeah, she's, as the AI newly human, she's taking it very literally. And so they hit it off with the Masquerades, but interestingly enough, the stories are tied by, like, Ross Batani being at the center of it, because, well, Eddie's circumstances, but also Maud is his girl, and he gets mad at her. Which, side note, I was like, the entire episode, I was like, why does that actor look so familiar? I think I know what he's from now. I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure that's McNabb from the show Psych. Which is, there's stark differences between this character and McNabb. McNabb is kind of like the very, like, oh so positive dude. Obviously, Ross Batani is, like, such an utter complete douchebag. So, but also an abusive piece of crap. That Maud has to do what he says, because it's like, right, he found me when I had nothing, and obviously he wants me, you know, it's like she's the caged bird in this situation. It's like, right, he found her, took her in, and then when I ask you to sing, and when he says to sing, I ask what song. And so she wants to leave, but even because Spooner can feel it with her power, she's like, you know, her empath abilities are like, you're disgusted anytime he touches you. Like, the thought of him, you're frightened, you're scared. But because Astra knows him, it's like she met Ross Batani in hell, and knows that his fear is of being like 1,000 spiders or something like that. So Astra wants to change things. It's like, yeah, they're supposed to not have the biggest effect on the timeline, but for Astra, it's like, I want to save Maud, knowing what her future is, that her body winds up in the water, and no one was ever found guilty of it. And so it's like, she wants to, you know, he's an abusive piece of crap, and eventually he will kill her. So luckily they were able to convince Maud, you know, the whole thing of, you know, gals helping gals. And it's like, you gals are the best I've ever met. So they let Maud go away, but it's like, right, we'll cover for you, and so that the Masquerades don't suffer any backlash. And you have Gideon getting on the stage and killing it. I wonder, is it just naturally in her to be that good, or is it just a byproduct of her her being an AI or whatever, that she just pitch perfect and just downright amazing. Either way, it puts on an amazing performance. But I'm curious, like, now it seems like we also got a peek at a dual side to Spooner's power. It seems like she can actually make people, like, it seems like very similar to Maggie's empath abilities on Charmed, where it's like, right, you can make someone feel a certain, like, so like she can tap into his fear, so either just saying it, but it seemed like she was, like, as she was kind of summoning the thoughts of it, like those emotions, that feel of fear, she can instill it in you. It seemed like that's what she was doing. So, but it's a guy that likes to push people around, acts so tough, and yeah, they were able to scare him off, so that worked out. And obviously you've got, on the flip side of things, you've got Hoover finding the legends. Obviously, Zari's kind of worried, being like, well, before Hoover even showed up, she was like, right, I got so caught up in taking care of the party, forgot the most important thing. Like, I should have gotten a wardrobe change. I should have done my makeup. And Eddie's like, no, it's a one-time event. Just be here, live in the moment. And the Bullet Blondes put on their performance. I love kind of like God, what would be the word? The almost Cirque du Soleil type of takedown of killer, well, Terminator Hooverbot, well, 2.0. And really spectacular. And I love at the end, Ava and Sarah kissing, the crowd's like, oh. And then, like, Ava has like, we're not sisters, and the crowd goes, oh, yeah. I was like, yeah, I forgot about that. I was like, oh, I would have expected that crowd to, like, be all about it. It's like, oh, no, it's like, you didn't know that they're not sisters, so that made it. It's like, oh, okay, because at first they were probably like, oh, this is weird. Aren't you two? Oh, okay, you're not sisters. Okay, cool. So I thought that was neat. But Eddie has enough to open, like, a small bar and everything. And I think they were able to help him out because Zari's, I think, happy to be able to, use her power as an influencer and her powers of, like, knowing how to party and stuff to do some good. So it all worked out in the end. Sadly, by the time Astra and them got there, they just barely missed the legends. Gary's the one on the train. He's like, don't worry, legends. And I'm like, he's got the key to the door. And you're like, that seems like that's shenanigans waiting to happen. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But Zari's proud of herself, because Sarah's like, yeah, you still got a couple hours left of this whole running things. But she decides, we need other Zari to handle this. So presents an opportunity for Nate and her to talk. So this is more her field, which, obviously, like, Zari 1.0 typically doesn't get as much screen time as 2.0, but yeah, obviously got to get her caught up on all the circumstances they're under. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where that goes, especially with Nate, with that conversation he's going to have with Zari, because it's also, once again, like, how do they balance out their relationship? And I guess they've never really talked about the future of their relationship. It's kind of that hard conversation, because it's like, yeah, things are fine as they are. You don't want to kind of disrupt that, but it's like, no, are they only fine because I'm afraid to kind of put my heart out there and be all in? Especially because the last time you fell in love with a time travel lady, it didn't work out. But it's also like, it's a situation where, like, there's circumstances that will, like, there are circumstances that prevent you from going all out, and you use that as an excuse to not to put your heart out. And I get it. Once again, it's kind of a self-defense. It's a defense mechanism to protect yourself from, like, heartbreak and stuff like that. So it's definitely going to be interesting what the next episode has in store with all of this. Maybe the Astra, Spooner, and Gideon can catch up in time with the legends. What the next shenanigans ensue, what next killer robot gets sent their way, because Astra, Spooner, and Gideon haven't had to deal with that yet, only the legends have, but we'll see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.